Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the story of Joseph, a man of favour and a man of foresight. Part 2 is called He's Not There. So in part 1, we looked at the first half of Genesis 37, how Joseph was the favoured son out of 12. He was a dreamer. He was given dreams by God and he shared them with these brothers of his, perhaps a bit unwisely and probably out of time. This has now caused even more conflict between the brothers. Joseph is sent to go and check on his brothers. They are off in the field, they're working, and he's clearly not. And even this detail is just adding to the building of the conflict, because the younger one, the father has sent him to go and check that all is well and let me know. So to spy on them, get information on them and tell it to their dad. So the brothers, you can understand, would be even more frustrated with this. We can tell that the hatred of the brothers is really at its climactic point, because it says in verse 18, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. And the language of verse 18 here, the fact that Joseph was seen in the distance, the fact that he was approaching, and before he arrived, there was a decision made in the minds of the brothers. It got me thinking about a story in the New Testament, a parable that Jesus teaches that uses a very similar kind of image of someone arriving in the distance, and before they arrive, there is a response in the heart of the father. And I'm talking about the parable of the lost son. And obviously in the parable in the New Testament, we see such a different response. Joseph, you could argue, was innocent. He was, probably annoying, and there was a lot of conflict, but he hadn't really done anything that was evil or bad, and yet his brother's response was to kill him. And then you look at the parable, and yes, the son had done wrong. He had squandered the inheritance. He had considered the family to be so irrelevant that he didn't want anything to do with them, and he had gone away and probably didn't ever think he would come back. And yet the father's response in the parable in Luke 15 is that he was filled with compassion. And this is a technique that's quite commonly used in the Bible. Language or certain phrases will make you think of another part of the Bible, and you're supposed to go to that other passage and just kind of compare the two scriptures as if they were side by side. And so if you find a phrase or a word that makes you think of another part of scripture, then you should go to it and follow that little path of wonder and see where you end up. That took me to Luke 15. It is challenging that we should be much more like the father than the brothers. In fact, we shouldn't be at all like the brothers. The brothers don't come across great in the story, even though it's so easy to justify the point of view of the brothers. Joseph is being annoying, and the father is favoring him unfairly, and the brothers have been working hard and not getting the rewards, and they are older but not treated with any respect. And it's so easy for us to fall into these patterns in our own lives, that yes, we are treated unfairly a lot of times, and yes, our case for frustration can be justified. But the challenge in this, we should go to Luke 15 and find Jesus' teaching about how we should respond, and it should be with compassion. We've received so much grace, we have enough to give out. So the brothers have plotted to kill him. It's like a premeditated murder, and there's lots of cisterns around. And I didn't know this, but actually I got a new Bible. Oh, I'm so excited about it. It's a cultural background study Bible, and I was reading some of the commentary in this. A cistern is a well without water. A well is dug down and it hits underground water, and that's what fills it up. A cistern doesn't go down that deep. A cistern is just almost like a collecting place for rainwater. So they were near a cistern and they decided to put Joseph in it. And then we have Reuben stepping in. Reuben brings a sense of reality to the situation. He says, okay, let's not kill him. Let's put him in this cistern here. And then the passage tells us that in Reuben's mind, he was planning to come back later and get him out of the cistern. Reuben was the oldest. He was the one who would normally have been the long-awaited heir, and you would think naturally that he would have grown up being the favored one, but he wasn't. Joseph was. If any of the brothers would have been personally frustrated at Joseph's favor, you would imagine it would be Reuben. But Reuben is the one here who's selflessly protecting his brother. And then I imagine Reuben must have gone. I'm not sure what happened to Reuben, because then Judah, who's the fourth oldest. He sees that there's some merchants coming by from Egypt, and he knows that he will be able to get money for selling his brother into slavery. So his motives are really contrasted with Reuben's. Reuben's were quite selfless, and Judah's are entirely selfish. He wasn't even satisfied to kill him. He said, if we kill him, we don't even get anything. But if we sell him, we can at least get some money for ourselves. So Judah has just highlighted himself to be the worst character in the story at this point. So I remember reading this the first time and thinking, no, like Jesus is the Lion of Judah. How can Judah be so horrible? But he is. So we do read more about the life of Judah throughout the rest of the story. So I spoke about language being used to draw our attention to some other story or another character. It's almost like foreshadowing something. And we definitely see a lot of that in the latter half of chapter 37. And so to finish, I just want to pull out some of the phrases that just scream Jesus. This is a book all about Jesus, and he's the first thing that we should be looking for when we're reading it, whether it's an Old Testament passage, whether it's the Psalms, whether it's the prophets, or whether it's the Gospels and the New Testament. Jesus is all over this book. In fact, I got another Bible. I'm Bible obsessed, called the Jesus Bible. You might have heard of this. I'm just going to take a little moment to talk about this Bible because I love it so much. This Bible is all about Jesus, and all throughout the book there's like articles, like full page articles, and everything's to do with Jesus and how Jesus is showing up on all the pages. Some of the pages will have articles in the margins, and some are full page articles and some are multiple page articles. One of my favorite things is that each book has been given a title as it relates to Jesus. So for example, Leviticus, it says Jesus is our sacrificial substitute. I'm just going to find another random one. Nehemiah, Jesus is our rebuilder of the broken. All throughout the books, you're just finding Jesus, and if you can't see him, then this Bible helps you to pull it out. What I've kind of gone and done, making my own notes. So anything that I notice that's to do with Jesus, I just highlight it and just add in notes. So this is going to be like an ongoing reference Bible for myself, and it's all in pink. I've decided that this Bible is just going to be pink. This is my pink Bible, pink and grey. This isn't my main Bible that I use. My main Bible is my hand-painted one that I painted, and this one I'll just put all kind of notes in it. But if it's to do with Jesus, I will then go get my Jesus Bible and put my note in. I'll do it there and then because otherwise I'll forget. Hopefully over the years it'll just become saturated with notes, in addition to the notes that are already there by some amazing commentators. That was a total aside. I didn't even plan to do that, but there we are, it's in. To get back to my story of Joseph, I'm just going to go through and pull out some of the notes that I found that reminded me of Jesus. And yes, these are all in my Jesus Bible. So in verse 23, Joseph came to his brothers and they stripped him of his robe. And this reminded me about how Jesus was stripped going into his crucifixion. And in verse 24, they took him and threw him into the cistern, and the cistern was empty. And this made me think of how Jesus was thrown into the tomb. He was obviously buried. He went down. Just as Joseph went down into the cistern, Jesus went down into the tomb. But the cistern was empty, and the tomb was empty too. And then just a little extra note, the camels were loaded with balm, spices and myrrh, and myrrh was a common spice used in burial rituals of the Jewish people, including in Jesus's burial ritual. I think I've got the verse actually. John 19:39 references that myrrh was used on the body of Jesus. In verse 28 it says his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern. So he's gone down and now he's being pulled up, and this reminds me of the resurrection of Jesus. So he was put in, but then the tomb was empty and he was risen. He rose again out of the cistern in Joseph's case, and then he was sold for 20 shekels of silver into slavery. And that obviously reminded me of how Jesus was also sold for 30 pieces of silver. In verse 29, this is my favorite part. Reuben, the selfless brother, went to go and find his brother in the cistern. He obviously didn't know the plan of Judah and the fact that they'd sold him off. So he goes back trying to look for his brother, but it says Joseph was not there. This is the title of part 2 because Jesus was not there. You know, Mary went on that Sunday morning to try and find him in the tomb, but the tomb was empty and he was not there. And Reuben probably didn't know it yet, but Joseph was alive and well. And so is Jesus. Jesus is alive and he is a living God. So I hope you enjoyed part 2. He's not there. We'll continue with the story of Joseph in my next video, where we'll be starting with chapter 38. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.